Are you ready for the next step in your career? Do you feel like you're in a place where you're seeking guidance, but not getting it? Are you leading a team that just isn't listening and you're not getting the results you need? Is it time for you to sharpen your leadership skills? Then you've come to the right place. Welcome to the What Do You Stand For podcast.
Welcome to the What Do You Stand For podcast, the place where emerging leaders come to be informed, inspired, and transformed. My name is Arthur Keith. I am the host of this podcast, and I am passionate about hospitality leadership. This evening, I have with me three members of the squad. We have the resident loudmouth and troublemaker, Colin. Say hello, Colin.
Hello, Colin. How are you tonight, Arthur? I am happy to be here. Looking forward to a great conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. And then we have DJ Daryl.
Woohoo! What's going on, guys? I'm looking forward to a great session today.
You are looking quite sharp this evening. Those of you that can't see his beautiful yellow tie and crisp blue suit are missing something.
I like the little hanky in the pocket works well too.
Hey, pocket squares. Call it what it is, my brother. Call it what it is.
Yeah, it's a hanky, dude. But whatever.
Daryl's got swag, people.
That's right. And speaking of looking good, Jerry is in the house.
Hello, everybody. Be here tonight. Looking forward to this very much.
Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. I want to kick tonight off with a story I read recently that I think is worth sharing, and I think it's something for us to talk to. And it's a story about if any of you are fans of Shark Tank, you're familiar with Mark Cuban as an entrepreneur and as a business leader and owner of the Dallas-Mavericks. And recently, Mark heard some news about a former player of his who had fallen on some hard times, Delonte West, who suffered from bipolar and had actually become homeless. He was an individual that played for the Dallas-Mavericks for a number of years, and during his career earned over $16 million. But at this point in his life, he was handling outside of a gas station in the Dallas area. And Mark Cuban heard that story and was so moved, he jumped in his car himself and went to find Delonte. He didn't send somebody. Now, this is certainly a man who's got the wherewithal to send an assistant or to send somebody. He went himself. He went himself because he wanted to connect with Delonte and do what he could to help him get back on his feet. And he did that. He picked him up, found a place for him, and he's now no longer homeless, and he's on his way back to recovery. And that's because not his current leader, but a former leader of his took it upon himself to do that. And what Mark did that truly impressed me was he made it personal. He didn't choose to send someone else do that work. He did it himself. And I believe that a what do you stand for type of leader is someone who makes it personal. So that really inspired me, and I think it's a great example of what we talk about on a weekly basis. And I'm just curious as I speak to my fellow members here on the podcast, how does that story resonate with you? And is leadership, do you also believe leadership is personal, or am I just crazy with that thought?
I think it's personal. I think it should always, if you're in a leadership capacity, you basically are responsible for your cast. You're responsible for the people that or helping you to achieve your goals. It's not just one way. I think it has to be definitely both ways. You're looking out for them as in terms of their welfare, and you're making a connection. We talked about in our previous casts or shows, it was about making it personal or acting small. We're building relationships. And so it's a lot more about making sure that you're making a connection as a family. This is a community that we're building. And so I think it's very important that we should always make a connection that way.
I agree with that 100%. I mean, there's people that I've been involved with, where I was a leader, and folks, this is, 20, 25 years ago, that are still to this day reaching out for me for one thing or another. And I'm doing the same thing, reaching out to folks that I've been involved with in terms of having a super good leader or whatever in my life that I've taken, an interest in staying connected and asking questions. And, I think it's very personal. I think, for me personally, this doesn't resonate for everyone, but for me personally, it's like we are like a family. You may not see each other every day. People say there's this fine line between being connected and being too connected. And that's something that maybe we could talk about tonight too. Where is that line? And I believe that, I think you zigzag across that line consistently throughout your career with different people, and personally, yeah.
So are you challenging us with the thought that perhaps it is possible for it to get too personal?
Well, I'm asking that question, what everyone else thinks. I think that it's been said, and I've heard it throughout my career, be careful about that line. Don't cross that line, becoming too personal. And I have, truthfully, I've done both. I've become too connected with someone and crossed that line myself, where it didn't end up well. And conversely, I've stayed, tried to stay a little too distant or gotten a little too close. And what I've learned over the years as to what works best is, like I said, to zigzag across it just a little. You have to always, when you're in the leadership role and somebody's reporting to you, in the current moment, it's a hard path to walk. But as long as you're cognizant of the responsibility that person still has in the organization, you have to, keep that top of mind while you're, as I say, crossing that line back and forth. So I don't know. What does anybody else think about that? What, Arthur, were you going to say something?
No, I guess the thought was running through my head. It was, do we think it's worth the risk?
So let's break this down a little bit, because you guys both said you want to be personal, and I totally have had those relationships in my career, and things have happened. But let's break this down just for a second. I want to go a little bit smaller, right? So being personal, we are people managing people, right? And at the end of the day, there has to be some sort of empathy, understanding. You're managing people, you're leading people, and people are diverse and have different points of view, and they're unique, right? So by all means, yes, you have to be personal, because to be a successful leader, you have to actually manage everybody to the best of their abilities, right? Your job is to manage them to make them better. So I totally get that. But in this world of a litigious state that we live in this litigious state that we live in, right, there is definitely a line of being too personal. And at the same time, I don't believe that any of us in our roles, I think unless we had, I don't know, any of us could have done what Mark Cuban did, right? As much as we would have wanted to, and there was no way I would ever want to have seen any of my employees out there, right? It's a little bit different in the real world. Mark, he doesn't have the worry of the litigious, the legality. I don't even know what I'm trying to say, but the whole idea of getting sued for doing something outside of the realm, right? Because if I work for a big corporation and then I go off and I do this, right, it's probably not looked upon very well by the corporation. But that's something you have to keep in mind. But the sentiment behind it is where I'm going with this, right? The whole idea that we would want to is the most important part, I believe, right? Because we'd want to look after our people, because we're managing people. Right, Arthur, I'm sorry.
No, you're right. I mean, the fear of lawyers, the fear of being sued, the fear of being misinterpreted, it is something. I mean, that's a reality. But there are definitely businesses out there that move forward, and individuals that move forward from the perspective of they believe it's worth the risk. There
are not corporations that believe it's worth the risk.
No, I think there are corporations led by leaders who make it easier to do these things than others.
I agree. I think if you're with a corporation that's that cold-hearted, depending on what you're doing,
it's not cold-heartedness. That's not.
I was in the middle of my sentence. I'd like to finish.
I'm sorry.
What I'd like to say is that you choose who you work for. And it's important to choose who you work for. And I'm saying that, yes, there is a line that can be crossed, but you have to live with you I have to live with me for the rest of my life. And if I see somebody that's hurting and that's in pain out there, and I don't go and do the best that I can do, then shame on me. And the world would be a much better place if most people did that. In the companies that I'm building and have built, that's a serious part of our culture is reach out, help others. There's that statue that we see all the time where, there's the man on the top of the mountain and he's reaching down with his arm to help pull the next guy up. I think that's the kind of company I want to be with. And if a corporation is not going to allow me to be that person, that compassionate person that I really am as a human being, then I want to move on. I don't want to be with that person.
Well, I think Colin, and I think you both are right. I think there is a level that you can go too far because it's hard to manage friends, because sometimes the frontline person or individual may take it a little bit too far in terms of thinking, hey, this is a friend of mine. And then you lose the opportunity to really manage that personnel. However, I think Colin is also correct in terms of empathy and compassion is definitely necessary. And if I could use an example, when working at this hotel resort, I worked with a young lady who was going through some mental issues, and she came to my office. And I basically, and this is in a banquet facility, and here we are. I have about 400 people who report to me, and she comes to me, hey, can I talk to you? And she's crying. And I had to stop everything I did, send everybody out of my office, and we started to talk about some issues. To make a long story short, it was an opportunity for me to get her connected with the right resources, making sure that I got in touch with my human resources department to help me navigate through that issues. Because I think it's more about making sure that we take care of the employee, the associate, the person that Colin talked about, the people. We need to make sure that person is taken care of. And it's not about being too personable, because I think it's a level of maturity that leaders have to go through. Do we have the maturity to understand how far to go and how far not to go? And so that's where it comes into.
And I wholeheartedly agree. I'm sorry, Arthur, but I agree, right? And I agree with what Jerry was saying too, right? Who wants to work for a company where who wants to work for a company where they don't want to care about their people? I wholeheartedly agree. But something that DJ just said is where I want to take this further, or where I want people who are listening to think about, right? He got his human resource department involved right away, right? That's us being responsible to our organization and taking care of our people, right? Because they're better suited. And just one more thing that I want to just jump on there for a second, right? DJ, I've been doing this for a long time. There goes my dogs. I've been doing this for a long time, and I don't know that I know the line. Right. And so it's hard for an entry level or an emerging leader to truly know what the line is. But the emerging leader should know that there are people that can help you do the right thing.
I would suggest the key line is, if you haven't crossed the line with your employees, that you've demonstrated a level of care and concern. You're probably, that's the zone that we should all be in. Demonstrating a level of care and concern. And sometimes you guys are all right. It's us making sure we connect them with someone that can help them. Mark Cuban you're right. He's like way off the spectrum, and that it was his company, his money. The buck stops with me, and he had the financial wherewithal to solve it himself. But as leaders, our role is to find that Mark Cuban type resource that is probably available either through the company or through our community, and try to connect our people who are hurting or in trouble with them. And then I would think just being someone who's showing care and concern along the way as they're being connected with those resources. So it's helping them connect the dots, and then showing care and concern so they don't walk that journey alone. I think that's where there's huge power, and we as leaders shouldn't abdicate that responsibility because we don't want to get involved.
Do you think it's more about culture, though? Is it something that is inspired? Because I think some people are afraid to cross that line, and you do have leaders who want to and probably go too far. And, so it's just one of those things. Is it really about if a leader such as Mark Creed, basically is kind of is one of those people who can it does stop with him. He can encourage that, but not all companies do that. So do you think it's about being empowered through the culture though?
I don't think it has to be, personally. I worked for a very large company in Nashville, and there was a young lady who I saw out by the copy machine of all places. I was walking by and I just noticed that she was distressed. She was not my employee. She was someone else's. And I just listened to her. I said, "Are you okay?" And she, spouted out a few things. I said, "Come on to my office." So she came in my office. I shut the door and I sat down. I just listened to her for a minute. It had nothing to do with the other leader, had to do with something she was dealing with. And I just listened to her and I let her talk. And then after I gave her, I recommended this book on leadership. And I said, "I know you're not in a leadership role right now, but look, this book on leadership can help you learn how to navigate where you're at right now in this job situation you're dealing with." So I came up with a resource and she appreciated that so much. And it wasn't necessarily the organization's culture at that time. It was my personal culture. And so I was able to help somebody. When you're able to help someone like that, they can go on and be able to help someone else and then help someone else. I don't think the culture has to be from the top down. I think that you can create a culture within your own little segment, like say if you're at the front desk or if you're back of the house somewhere or whatever it is. One person can make a difference. That can be sort of like the people talk about that bad apple that's in a bushel of apples. You can be that good apple too. You can be that good apple in there that helps spread the compassion.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time today talking about lawyers, and I'm like, really? Are things that bad out there where we're really that afraid to show some care and concern?
I think you set it up that way, man. I think you set it up that way. There's a difference between being a caring and compassionate and empathetic leader and it being too personal, right? They're two different things. And I think that, at least in my interpretation, they're two different things, right? One is I should not go over and ask any of my employees what's going on in their social life. Right? If it comes to me, it's one thing, but I don't need to know what's going on in the social life. DJ's nodding, so at least I know I'm halfway on the right track. Right? But it is fun to know your employees' family and their children. And when you meet them at the holiday parties and you get to know who they are and you ask questions, and there's a different side of personal, right? Mm-hmm. But caring and compassion and empathy are different than being too personal.
I love how you place that, Colin. I think a lot of times most people, if you ever heard the saying, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I think a lot of it has to do with, just connecting, I know a great leader, and I'm gonna have to use your name. Arthur used to always ask you about your family. Used to always ask you about certain things, what's going on, and how he remembered certain things about people always stuck with me. And even with our colleagues and people, when we talked, when he's not around, all of us had the same sentiment. One of the things that we always was like, he always remembers something special about each person. He made it personable to himself. And to us, that's a sign of a great leader. And so for me, I really appreciate it. And everybody else around us was the same way. So it's just about how much you care.
DJ, Arthur doesn't remember anything about me. What does that say? What does that say about me?
Oh, man, that's because you don't care.
I know that you're a lousy golfer. Your daughter's a better golfer than you are.
Thanks for
that.
I think what it boils down to, in my opinion, is it's just that, that emotional intelligence, that caring, compassionate concern for the people who work for you. Those people they'll stick around longer. You'll have less turnover. You have to care about your people. And I think what Mark Cuban did was an amazing thing. I think he had a big vision for being able to pull that guy out of the circumstance he had gotten himself into. I think then he probably acted small in terms of being able to help him take the steps he needed to get well. Sometimes some people just need a hand up. Sometimes people just need an ear, somebody to listen to them, somebody to, offer them a resource. And I'm not afraid personally. I don't care about the lawyers or anything. I don't care. I don't give a damn If I see a human being that's in need, guess what? I'm going to show up for that.
Can I use one other example real quick? A while back, I lost a very close friend who was basically my colleague and my boss at the time. Several of us working together, and we lost him, and it was very difficult for me. One of the day, I was trying to make sure everybody at work was taken care of. I was trying to make sure his family was taken care of. And this is my boss, but also a close friend. But after about 2 or 3 months later, I was having a tough time dealing with some things. And I needed to reach out to my HR person because I was really starting to deal with the loss of a friend and also a colleague. Because not only was he a boss, we were just real like family, right? And I reached out, if it's okay for me to call out a name, you can bleep it out later. I reached out to our HR vice president, which was Teresa DeLeo at the time. And she brought me into her office and she just let me just vent. And it was tough. It was really tough for me. And even to this day, it's still, a sentimental thing. I can feel, a lot of emotions building up. But what happened is I felt closer to my team because they all reached out to me to make sure I was okay.
Wow.
Made sure she called my office, made sure everybody shut down my office, got me to my car, did not let me go back to my office, told everybody, look, he's going to be gone for a couple of days. She checked on me the following day. She checked on me the following week. I was much better after over a period of time. But what I remember most is the care and concern that she had for me. And so a level of loyalty I had even more so for the people that I worked for, a level of camaraderie. And so so all this, is it personable? Yeah, it's personal for me. And I feel like the same thing. I try to do the same thing for other people. I look out for what their needs are. And I try to take care of those things as much as I possibly can within my power. And if I can't do it, I get people involved that can help me with that as well.
I agree. I want to say, I reiterate, she is a great leader. I know her personally myself. She is an incredible leader.
Yeah.
And so that makes you want to pay it forward too, doesn't it, Daryl?
It does. It really does. It's just one of those things that, yeah, she could have went further in terms of going too far, but at that point, I don't care how far you go. Right now, I was going through some things that I need to help through. I need to navigate through. So,
all right. So here's another question. How many of you have sat in your office or sat in an office or in the cafeteria across from someone that you were working with and they shared with you stuff that was going on in their life outside of work and they just unloaded on you? And in your mind, I'm sure if you were like me, you're thinking, ooh, that's personal stuff.
It's a lot.
That's a lot. Has that ever happened to anyone besides me?
Of course.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
yes. Oh, yes.
Of course.
And what do you do in those scenarios?
You have to curtail that. You have to be able to, redirect. You redirect, say, I don't know, in my mind, you have to be able to let them say some of the things and then realize if it's gone too far, then you have to be able to say, listen, I feel like you need some other kind of help that I can't offer you. And so what I do want to offer you is a place to go to deal with those types of things.
Yeah. So never forget, in that scenario, you are still a leader. So
yeah.
lead them to someone that can help them.
I've run before. I absolutely have.
Yeah.
I have said, okay, I'm done with lunch. Got to go.
Wow. That must have been a rough one, though.
Listen, I was a young leader. I was a young leader. I didn't know any better. I just got the hell out of there because I didn't want to hear any more about it.
You raised a great point, though, because there are a lot of people who are still learning when it comes to leadership, what they're able to do and what they're empowered to do.
So what would you tell them to do?
Oh, it's tough. I would, if I had ran, the first thing I would have did is reached out to one of my leaders above me to find out how could I have done a better job with it. Because we don't always get it right. We're leaders, and, I've working in banquets. I have 400 plus personalities that I got to deal with, and you don't always get it right. And I mean, especially when it comes to someone talking about, let's say, women's issues. I'm definitely not comfortable with that, but I may try to find someone who could help me or help them talk about it a little bit more freely. What I am honored about is that they feel safe enough to approach me. So undoubtedly, I created an environment for them to be able to do that. So that's a big deal. So for them to reach out or speak to you about it is a really huge privilege and honor to do so. If you're a little worried, talk to someone else who can help you mentor it to the next level.
I've used the comment before in conversations like that, where it's like, okay, this has crossed a little bit of a line that I'm not comfortable with. So I have to exit the conversation. I've actually said that, but I care about you. Thank you for sharing, but it's a conversation that I'm not comfortable with.
But it's got to be follow-up though. Here's the thing about all of that. You have to have some follow-up. Even if it's just 30,000 feet level, you have to have some follow-up to make sure that they understand that you did hear them. And just not something that you just static, You also have to cover yourself. If somebody brings up a conversation that, let's say, if it's crossing the line of that could be considered like a sexual harassment kind of thing, you need to CYOA on those kinds of things. You need to call HR or somebody and just get it on the record what just happened. And I know I said earlier, I don't care about the lawyers. I wasn't talking about a situation like this. I do care, and everyone else should care. But if it crosses a line like that, all I'm saying is, definitely redirect them. Like I said, I'm not comfortable with this conversation. Maybe this is something you need to be talking about with, name somebody, HR or whatever it is, whatever it is. But then, call HR and tell them that you got caught up in a conversation like that you quickly exited, and let them know that you weren't comfortable with.
Yeah, and I agree with what Jerry just said in terms of covering your own ass, in terms of if it was a conversation you weren't comfortable with, right? But what if it's not an issue? It's just a conversation you're not comfortable with, right? They're talking about something that illegal, immoral, unethical, right? Has nothing to do with work, but illegal, immoral, unethical, right? There's no follow-up to that. There's run and hide, right? There's run and hide. And I'm not trying to say that you should run and hide as a leader. I think everything you just said, Daryl, is awesome, right? You go and you talk to somebody, you see how you should have done this differently in the future. But it happens.
Well,
security, come get him. He's selling drugs.
When it becomes locker room talk,
but I'm not even, I'm just thinking, I'm sorry, Arthur, but I'm thinking just like, in my day, it was illegal drug use, right? It happened, right? I was of the age and everybody was doing it.
Yep.
Colin, let's be real here. Illegal drug use is heavier today than it ever was. And
nobody talks to me about it anymore.
Well, that's just, no, you're too old.
Right, I'm too old, exactly.
Here's another thing that I'm comfortable with saying. So you have to be comfortable with yourself. So these emergent leaders that are listening to this, or people who are coming up in leadership, you have to be, this is an important thing, I think, that I had to learn the hard way. And that is, be you. And if you're not comfortable being in a conversation that you don't want to be involved in, if it's about illegal drug use or whatever the conversation is, you have to be able to say, I'm not comfortable discussing things that are illegal, immoral, and whatever. So by all means, come to me for everything you need. However, these are conversations I'm not willing to be involved in.
So you're setting guidelines then, huh?
Be you. Hey, I'm all day long, every day of the week. And I think that that's important. That's important to be straight up. Yeah, you got to set boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
It can be too personal. Yes, there are places where it is way too personal, right? But I don't think there's any place, and this echoes what Jerry said earlier, there's any place where you can be too caring or too compassionate or too empathetic. So yes, it can be too personal, but no, I don't think it can be too empathetic.
So on that note, and with that thought, I think we should end it, because this topic can be a quagmire. It really can. And what's amazed me in my career is the things that you hear, the things that are shared in the workplace. And I'm just going to suggest, as a leader, you're going to hear some things, you get involved in some conversation at some point that you're going to be like, whoa, where did that come from? It's just going to happen. Expect it to happen. And when it does, as I think you've heard from us today, if you feel uncomfortable, back it up, and make sure you share that with the appropriate people within your organization, but never, ever, ever walk away from the conversation without showing a genuine sense of care and concern. And if you have the opportunity of connecting with someone that can help them and help them walk through tough times, do that and be willing to put yourself out there as a leader to be someone that they can lean on as they go through those tough times. That's what we believe. It means to be a what do you stand for type leader. And that's truly what our people and those that we work with will look for. And that's what they deserve. You think about the time they spend with us as leaders versus at home, they're often looking for someone to help share their home burdens with at work, because we're all they have. Let's be real here. So sometimes we have to step up and be that resource personally, and sometimes we step up and direct them to the right resources. So we hope you enjoyed this episode of the What Do You Stand For podcast.
Yes.
Once again, thank you to the squad for joining the journey. Come back. Definitely, you can get more information about this podcast at arthurkeith.com. You can find out more information about the individual members of the squad if you want to connect with them, or if you want to share some questions for us to consider on future podcasts, please do so. Look forward to seeing you in the future and hearing from you. All the best. Enjoy this evening. Thank you.
Cheers.
For later.
Thanks, everyone.
Whoop, whoop.
Look for us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Find the links on arthurkeith.com. What do you stand for?